Good morning. This morning I'm here in Parliament House with Dr. Julie Sladden. Now I've got to let you know that actually Julie works on my team as well, but that's not where we met. We met for the first time here in Parliament House when she was up visiting. So Julie, I just want to ask you, as a GP, you made a really big decision to give up your practice over a very particular principle. It's a very big thing to do something like that. I know how important GPs are in my community. I know how they are trusted by their community. It's very hard to walk away from your clients the way you did, from your patients the way you did. So it was a big move from your family perspective, from your perspective, from the history of all you've been through perspective, all of that, and all of the good work you've done. And I now notice I've just read your article in the Spectator magazine today, which puts you further out in the firing line. So what led you to make that decision?
Well, Russell, as with any decision, big decision in life, often they're simple but not easy. And for me to step away from medicine, it was a decision like that. And obviously there was a lot of thought that went behind it, but as things unravelled in 2021, and I looked at all of the options that lay in front of me, it was really the only decision that I could make in good conscience for both my profession, for myself, and for my patients. And it enabled me to, in good conscience, then be able to speak about what I could see happening. Because I couldn't work, because I chose to remain unvaccinated. So then really my options were limited.
What was the response from your community and your former peer group?
That's really interesting because it has changed over time. And it was actually quite a frightening time. So I won't make it sound as though it was... I don't feel courageous at all. A lot of the decisions that I've made over the last few years, I've felt frightened and unsure, but I haven't been able to move in the other direction. And the other direction would have been, take the vaccine and continue working and stay silent. And I wasn't able to do that. And a lot of the basis for that decision really came from my own personal health struggles, but also when I did research into what was known and what was unknown, I knew that the best that could be said of the injections was that we don't know. And I actually said that to the politicians that I went to go and speak with, while we were going through the 8 weeks waiting for the mandates to come into effect. So when I made that decision, it felt very much like being in a trust fall, and I remember having a conversation with a colleague of mine who felt the same, and I said, well, surely we're not alone. And so I started asking around some of my colleagues and realised that there were quite a few of us who felt similarly, and we gradually found each other in the state of Tasmania, and there were about 500 healthcare workers altogether who were similarly, standing up.
That's a very large number.
It was.
And that wasn't public at any stage.
Well, it was. It eventually made. There was a case that we tried to get a stay on the. We tried to get things postponed, but it was just summarily dismissed out of court. So the healthcare workers basically each found their own way through this, and a lot of people walked away from their chosen profession. It wasn't just doctors, it was nurses as well. It was every single health service provider in Tasmania was mandated. You couldn't even do telehealth, which I've mentioned that before.
And
it makes no sense.
You don't even have any contact with the patient.
It's punitive.
You do it by the phone.
Yeah. And I was told the reason for that was because healthcare workers associate with healthcare workers, therefore you shouldn't be working. That's just no sense. I mean, working from home became a standard thing during COVID, so look, it felt punitive, and I haven't found any other reason other than that to explain that. anomaly, and people are similarly incredulous when they hear that. What, you weren't even allowed to do telehealth? No, I wasn't. So
3 years down the track, what's been the road? What's been the walk?
Look, I've been able to sleep at night, and I think that's that really is the basis of any of those decisions that you make. You know, simple but not easy. But I knew that if I didn't make that choice, I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night. And you find your people, and you work to try and bring the truth out, and you know, really try and find a way through that is just bringing light to the topic. And I've had a number. I think the thing that I found most surprising is that here we are in 2024. We're still fighting. We still have a problem with free speech in science. Like, you know, I'm part of an organisation called Australians for Science and Freedom. The whole basis of this organisation, which is really a think tank of academics from all around Australia, and, you know, everyday Australians as well. We want to use the scientific method, free open discourse, you know, to get to the truth. I mean, you know, there should be nothing wrong with that, but we're still fighting censorship. The things that we're talking about aren't getting out into mainstream media. You know, there's evidence in peer-reviewed journals that, you know, many doctors and healthcare professionals still don't know about. But I've had a lot of healthcare providers and doctors, a increasing amount of doctors, and I recently ran in the Tasmanian state election, and I was absolutely stunned by the number of people that came to me behind the scenes. Thank you for standing. Thank you for, thank you for standing up against what's happened. You know, this is really important. And I to a few people I said, well, there's plenty of room beside me. But we soon saw what happened. Well, I soon experienced what happened, and literally I was, you know, thrown under the bus by my own profession. The AMA came out very strongly against me and said that, you know, my views were, although they were very careful not to name me, that my views were dangerous and misleading. Now, like I said, I had colleagues...
But there were people who responded to that, weren't there?
Responded to...
the AMA.
To the AMA, yes, there was a lot of pushback.
Not you, but other people responded.
Yeah, a lot of people pushed back against the AMA. But there was also, there was I'd say in the medical profession, because there's, you know, some newspapers that doctors follow, there was, let's just say, a robust discussion of a lot of different doctors. And it was really interesting to see the polarising views that were put forward. And as I read some of the comments, it really did make me realise that we've got a long way to go in, you know, just being able to have civil discourse in the health profession.
Usually we expect doctors and specialists to be questioning all the time, everything. I mean, I met a doctor in Victoria from the Mornington Peninsula who said he never gives an injection to a patient unless it's 10 years old and proved itself.
There's a saying in medicine, it's never be the first to use something and never be the last. You know, so don't be so set in your ways that you're not willing to try it. But don't be the first person, you know, unless you're in a controlled situation. And, you know, for anyone who's watched the Spotlight program this week, you know, we're listening to explanation of how the phase 1, 2 and 3 trials were crammed together so that, you know, we could effectively do 10 years of work in a much shorter space of time. To a certain extent, maybe, but we use time a lot in medicine. You cannot get long-term safety data in 12 months. And that was the thing that really, really sat very uncomfortably with me when the mandates
So what you're saying, you actually, one of the principles you left on was that you were not going to inject your patients with this experimental drug. Is that part of it?
Oh, look, I don't, in the line of work that, you know, I was doing, I wasn't doing vaccinations anyway. So, but I wasn't prepared to really inject myself or, you know, be able to... I mean, the AHPRA position statement, you know, basically said that any doctor that spoke out against the rollout, and that's really me paraphrasing it, you know, could be subject to disciplinary action. Now, that was a pretty...
And a lot of them were, weren't they?
Yeah, a lot of people were, which, you know, was essentially, although it was, just a position statement. It really effectively worked as a gag order, and it did frighten doctors into submission.
Is that the first time that's happened in Australian history?
Yeah, that's the first time. That's never happened before. That was truly remarkable. Because our code of conduct also says that we've got to put the needs of our patients and our community above all else. So if you've got concerns about, a treatment or something, we have to speak up. We're compelled to speak up. Most people have they either do the Hippocratic Oath or the Geneva Declaration when you graduate, and it's clear, you put the needs of your patient and your community.
Yeah.
That's part of the responsibility of being a doctor. And for me, when I stood up, it was about living out that declaration that I made.
Well, today's article that's been published, that's online, I take it. That's not in the Spectator magazine yet.
That's online.
That's online. Do you get any blowback from an article like that?
Occasionally.
I mean, you just outlined the situation where we currently are now over how much the government's spending on COVID responses in the current budget, which was $2 billion, $2,000 million. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be spending money on pharmaceuticals, but, even, our previous Deputy CMO, Chief Health Officer Nick Coatsworth says, at least one of the antivirals has a very dubious evidence base. Now, when you look at our own Australian guidelines, these antivirals have very dubious evidence base. So why are we dedicating $1.3 billion of our hard-earned, and I mean at the moment, people are feeling the pain of, cost of living. Why are we spending that much money on something that has a dubious evidence base? A course of those antivirals is $1,100 for a 5-day course. There's no research funding that I could find dedicated into finding out whether those actually work, and that doesn't sit well with me.
The vaccine compensation scheme brought in by the previous government, now administered by this government, I think under Bill Shorten's department. It finishes when? On the 30th September, and only $20 million has been allocated for that. Yet after, are they saying after the 30th September you just can't claim?
As far as I know, there are no plans to extend the vaccination claim scheme. Let's hope that's reconsidered. I mean, as we discovered it on Spotlight or listening to other people's stories of the vaccine injured, like Jackie Strecker, the vaccine injury claim scheme is notoriously hard to get compensation from. So many claims have been rejected.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have given up. And these people, their lives have been, it's not just a small inconvenience, their lives have been changed. I mean, Jackie Strecker said she had to have a chairlift put in her property. So she can't walk upstairs. That's a huge change in somebody's life and their ability to enjoy everyday life. For people who are not anti-vaxxers, they went out and got the vaccine. So where was the government looking out for them? Where was the government keeping people safe?
Well, you were probably called a cooker and an anti-vaxxer. What do you say to that?
Look, where people label you when they don't have a decent argument against what you're saying. So I'll just let those labels sit where they lie.
They probably hurt the first time, the second time is not so bad, and the third time or the fourth time.
I've also been called dangerous and misleading.
Dangerous and misleading, yeah. How many GPs would be called dangerous and misleading?
Yeah, it's a badge of honour.
Julie, thanks for being with us today. It's been great to talk to you, and all the best with your next contribution to the Spectator magazine.
Thanks, Russell. It's always a pleasure.